So WikiLeaks, in one of their latest batches of emails, has a bunch of correspondence within this company called Stratfor, which is a private intelligence firm. It's kind of like the privatized version of the CIA. They gather information for a variety of clients, like private corporations. I think Coca-Cola has used them before. Just gather information on whatever they need. They have big clients, big Fortune 500 companies, and they get data and do all that stuff. Anyway, in the emails that the Stratfor executives are sending back and forth, a lot of confidential stuff was revealed about all kinds of things that the public is not supposed to know about. And one of those was a company called Trapwire, which developed a computer algorithm that basically tracks people using public surveillance cameras. That's the best way to describe it. Using things like gait recognition, the way you walk, it can potentially recognize you from one spot to the next, and it can flag you for suspicious behavior, but you don't know what the suspicious behaviors are. They think it could be something like just taking photographs of a landmark that flags you into the system, or signaling for your family to come over so that they can take a photo with you, things like that, or just loitering in an area for too long. So this computer program, it's not a person with judgment. This computer algorithm decides you're a suspicious individual and a threat, and then puts you into their system and profiles you. And then when you go somewhere else, like let's say you're initially flagged somewhere in the state of Texas, then a couple months later you're on vacation in New York, one of the subway cameras in New York can re-identify you and build a file of where you've been, where you know, and predict your behavior, possibly even predict where you might go next based on where you've been. Just another way the government and private corporations might be tracking people without their approval. I mean, this is a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. Sure. It's a company where their clients are mixed. Some of their clients are powerful government agencies, and I think even the U.S. military uses this software at army bases.
And this is all legal?
Well, I personally don't think it's legal. I think it just hasn't. It's something that nobody would have known about had it not been for WikiLeaks. And the hacker who allegedly brought these emails out is now rotting in a jail right now.
Now, this whole WikiLeaks situation about him being in the Ecuador embassy, how crazy is that?
That is completely crazy. That this is our big, right now, this is the U.S. government's one of our biggest priorities is this dude.
And this dude, by the way, they're trying to get him out under this most ridiculous charge of surprise sex, right? Yep. That's what it is. What it is he had sex with a woman, and I guess the alleged story is that he did it with a condom on, and then they were lying in bed together with no condom, and he stuck it in again. And it's craziness. Well, it's craziness that they're willing to, they're going after this guy. A woman that he actually had, yeah, it was a douchebag move. I mean, if she wanted to wear a condom, and that's a douchebag move for sure. But you're going to have this gigantic manhunt for him where he has to hold himself up in a fucking embassy and to avoid extradition to this country and it just so happens that he's the guy that releases all this information that shows helicopters gunning people down the street, mistaking them for terrorists. Yeah, well, the thing with WikiLeaks, when they reveal stuff that potentially compromises informants and gets innocent people killed. I haven't seen a single instance of that actually happening, but that argument has been made. Yes. And when that is done, I'm not okay with it. That is wrong. To put innocent people in harm's way, you're releasing information that should not be in the public eye. But it's important to note that he hasn't done that. Right, but that's the thing. He has not done that as far as I know. In terms of releasing that video of innocent people being gunned down and children being shot full of lead, that video and then this thing about Trapwire, I think these are things that are in the public interest, very much so. I like to know that all these new surveillance cameras going up in towns and cities, because there are a lot of them now that were not there a couple of years ago, that many of these could be plugged into Trapwire. That's useful public information. That's what the media used to do. In a previous generation, it would be like Walter Cronkite or Edward Murrow telling you about this. It would not be Julian Assange on his WikiLeaks forum, you know? So I think in some regards what he's doing is at the forefront of journalism. You put something out there that's tremendously important to the public, that is being covered up and not known. That's journalism. It's craziness that they've wasted so much resources to try to drag him out of the country like this. It's terrifying. Yeah. Well, they're doing it to make an example. And they're talking about storming the Ecuadorian embassy. You make an example out of him, nobody else is going to have the balls to create a WikiLeaks too. It's done. And isn't that an act of war? If they enter, well, it ends the whole diplomatic system, the whole system of embassies, which is pretty important stuff. Otherwise, if we don't have that, then we're just a bunch of animals, just different countries battling for resources at all times, and you have no ground rules. We have a much higher tolerance right now for corruption
and for bad legislation than we used to.
And that's what a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
This National Defense Authorization Act that got passed, which is what really is an act of treason. I mean, it's you could think of no other way to describe it.
It appears to be high treason. That's what I'm saying. Like if in the 60s or the 70s, if the people found out that, oh, by the way, Kennedy drafted something that would take away your right to a trial and allow him to imprison you on suspicion alone for the rest of your life, people would be like, what? No way.
And it's supposed to be that we're supposed to trust them, that they're only going to use it on people who deserve it. They're only going to do it on bad guys. It doesn't happen. Don't worry about it, Mike. It's not about you.
Right.
We're just worried about terrorists. We're not going to use it. Says who?
Yeah.
And
Also, that's not the role of the government in the first place. You doing these things is not something that's constitutional to begin with, so your intentions don't really matter.
It's frightening that could ever get passed. It's really frightening. And it just shows you how when people are in power, when they're in positions of power, they do everything they possibly can to hold it. And when they sense a trend of this, what the trend is, information is coming in and people are having much more access to all sorts of things, and ultimately the internet is going to represent how people communicate and how people express anything. So these fucking assholes that are running things are just holding on tooth and claw, and the way they're doing that is by pulling rights away. And they're doing it under the guise of helping us, which is fucking disgusting.
It is. You probably read about this, the NDRP, the National Defense Resources Preparedness.
What is that?
It's an executive order from Obama. And I read through it, and I was like, whoa, this makes no sense. He's claiming powers that no president should claim. The ability to nationalize whole companies or nationalize industries and take personal property and land and really take and do whatever his administration wants. All they have to do is claim they're preparing for a national emergency. There doesn't have to be proof that there's a national emergency on the way. There doesn't actually have to be a national emergency. The national emergency can just be him declaring that there might be one.
The national emergency could be the threat of terrorism.
Yeah, exactly. It could be just this looming threat of terrorism. And then
that's why it's so, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's the scariest thing about having that sort of an enemy. You can kind of claim it's everywhere.
Right. Well, in the NDAA, part of the language is until hostilities end. So what does that mean? It's like when there's not a single violent person on the earth who ever commits a crime or turns to violence against innocent people, then we'll stop detaining people without a trial.
What is the exact language? Until hostilities end?
Go on belligerentact.org.
I don't want to read this, man. I'm going to get depressed. Be contained indefinitely without trial. Wow, this is so weird. It makes it legal to incarcerate United States citizens without recourse to any form of judicial process. Just that alone.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Why do we have a judicial branch if you're not going to use it?
But the idea that you would allow someone to sign a law that says they can incarcerate United States citizens without recourse of any form. There's nothing you can do. They can lock you up for the rest of your life, and that's written down somewhere. And just because it's written down somewhere, that doesn't mean it's not crazy.
Right.
The fact that they even thought that they could be able to pass that would be something that you could put into law. What life in prison's not enough? We already have that.
Yeah. Well, it was like that Martin Luther King quote. He talks about how basically like just because it's a law doesn't make it just, and just because it's just, it might not necessarily be the law. You might be doing something that's against the law, but it's the just thing to do. And at the same time, a law might be profoundly unjust. Just because somebody signed a piece of paper, as you said, that doesn't mean that we should ruin thousands of people's lives over it.
It's completely ridiculous. People are evolving. Culture's evolving. Our understanding of our world is changing and ever moving forward. And our law should reflect that. And it shouldn't be the opposite of that. If there's a tightening down, well, that to me is a great example of how there's someone who doesn't get it. And the someone who doesn't get it is the people that are actually running shit. They have the wrong intentions. They're not looking at this correctly. You shouldn't be trying to tighten up. You should be trying to help all the things that are fucked up about the world.
Yeah.
That's what we should be using our resources for. And there's money in that as well, by the way. There's jobs in that as well, by the way.
There's jobs in any direction you take. I mean, the TSA is creating jobs. I'd rather see people employ more people over at NASA.
I would like to see that too. I would like to see that much more than I would like to see us go into foreign countries and invade their soil. But I think what's really scary to me is that people are allowed to make these decisions without the will of the American people behind them.
No, part of this was literally drafted behind closed doors. People had no input.
Yeah. It's terrifying.
And I felt like there's no way this thing will actually become law, but it's still disturbing. I have to keep an eye on it and tell people about it. And then Obama came out and said, his administration came out and said that they were going to veto it. And then I was like, all right, good. This is what should happen. You know, something ridiculous is proposed, and they say, we're not signing this. And then on New Year's Eve, while everybody was out drinking and not paying attention to these things, he signed it into law. And then after that, he took some heat for that. And he said, well, I'm not going to use what I just signed into law. I'm not going to use that section. And he issued a signing statement saying that he wasn't going to use it. But the problem with that is it's not legally valid. It's like doing something and then putting a Post-it note on somebody's door saying, sorry about that. Like, the signing statement is not a legally valid
not only that,
thing.
he said he wouldn't sign it,
Yeah.
and he signed it. Why am I going to believe that he's not going to use it after he said he's not going to use
Right,
it?
and then it gets even worse, because then it goes to federal court. Plaintiffs, including a former war correspondent, Chris Hedges, who used to work at the New York Times, and Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the Pentagon Papers. These are pretty credible people. These aren't like quacks, you know. They filed a court case thinking with the intention of blocking this because they said that NDAA could basically endanger their safety and the safety of any journalist. You know, if the government doesn't want you talking about something, let's just detain him without a trial. Problem solved. And the federal court judge, Catherine Forrest, ruled it unconstitutional. So again, it should have stopped there. But Obama's administration, his lawyers are now appealing that temporary injunction. And so every single step of the way, you're like, wait, if he doesn't want it, why does he keep pushing for it, you know?
It's so disturbing. It just reeks of corruption, and it reeks of the worst intentions. It reeks of looking at us like we're sheep to be controlled.
Well, the intentions are to crush dissent.
To crush
So
dissent.
there's the assumption that these protests will continue to grow in relevance and in size. And there's the assumption that the economy, if there's not some kind of economic collapse, who knows? It could just be years of slow employment and years of people being unsatisfied. And that's, even if that's not a total calamity, that's still a breeding ground for like mass civil unrest. And they think if we have this ability to imprison people without a trial, just on our say-so, that's going to crush dissent pretty fast. The first 1,000 people will be arrested and put in prison. That's the end of it. No more protesters, because nobody else is going to go out of their house.
Well, what's crazy, though, is that the people who are arresting the people are on the same side as those people. The people that are going to have to do the arresting, whether it's military police or whether it's regular police, those are just fucking citizens with jobs.
Yeah.
They're not the power problem.
Right.
They're not the people making the actual calls. That's a small group of people that we could easily overpower.
Yeah.
I'm not calling for a revolution. So disturbing and so a part of our reality, man. I can only hope that with guys like you running for Congress and with this young generation that's coming up, and this is one of the things that I've said, is that I don't think you're going to change these creepy old vampire dudes that are running banks. I think they are fucking set in their ways, and they're a bunch of old douchebags, and our only hope is the upcoming generation, guys like you.
It's time for everybody to step up who wants to.
These mid-20s motherfuckers with a dedication to change.
For some reason, the creepiest goddamn information gathering surveillance company that's ever climbed out of the shadows or been exposed happen to name themselves after a Gnostic god with a chicken head.
What the fuck?
Yeah, go figure. Even Wikipedia, Braxis, happens to be the same name of the company doing this goddamn Trapwire shit too.
No way.
Yeah, look up Abraxas, Gnostic Abraxas, a chicken head.
How do you spell it?
Abraxas.
Abraxas.
Abraxas. Gnostic. Wikipedia.